the larger organized protest broke up about 30 minutes ago or so. About 1,000 people, maybe more, hard to keep track. If only from the movies, most of us know the term double jeopardy. Can the governor be charged again? Mike, more on that in 1 second. We just got a little bit of a different angle for you. After about at least a 3-mile walk, this crowd is back where it kind of started, at least this protest in the Central West End. It's no smaller. If anything, this crowd has gotten bigger. Mike and Kay, when the governor got here, he got out and was able to see some of the hardest hit homes in the area. In fact, he was in this home right here.
We want him to be safe, so we just...
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, here we go.
Oh, my goodness.
People here say they heard a fight, saw a couple of people running through the parking lot. Police say that fight spilled over down Grand to a metro stop that's about halfway to St. Louis University. Can I ask you a couple of questions from Facebook?
Sure.
This is from Jane. How can areas like North St. Louis develop without causing gentrification and like displacing people in a lower economic class? Let's see if we can find a view. Tony, come this way. Over here, then you walk out and voila, you've got a beautiful view that way where it's all kind of first come, first served. Right now, this is the only way to get around a pretty big part of Main Street. There are about, 2 or 3 feet of water standing here on Main Street, but they need the river to drop by about 7 feet before they'll be able to get it open for cars and for tourists. But the city of New Orleans says it's turned a corner on violent crime. One way you can tell this is a closely watched race. We're here at the Marriott in downtown. No candidate, no supporters. Take a look though, dozens of cameras. This was the day floodwater forced its way into Georgia Cotton's house and turned her life upside down.
It wiped out my computer room. My basement, my family room was finished.
This was August. Her family only recently got all of the mud and crickets and gnats out of the house. But she says she still can't stay here because the flood also knocked out her furnace and hot water. And even though she says she doesn't live in a floodplain, her insurance won't cover the damage.
I try to stay positive, but I cry easily because I work so hard to try to keep my property up.
Who's to blame? Georgia says a Ferguson city inspector pointed her uphill to her neighbor's house and a drain that's running toward her property. This is Mike Person's place, who just happens to be running for state rep and who just happened to come home when we stopped by.
You can't block the road here, sir.
Okay, we can move.
Okay.
Is this your property here?
I'm not answering any questions until I talk to my lawyer.
Ferguson's city administrator says Mike Person has a, quote, thick folder of citations and says Person won't let city workers on his property to figure out the source of the flooding. After a phone call, Person met us at the end of his driveway to say he's not the problem, but also a victim.
You see this water here?
He says the flooding is coming from a nearby apartment complex and blames the sewer district and the city inspector.
He has sold them on the idea that, it's his fault, even though it's his responsibility to get with MSD or with the city and say, hey, we have a water runoff problem here.
I just need some help.
Georgia is worried she'll run out of time before anyone takes her problems seriously.
I got to figure out how to get it taken care of, and I don't have that kind of money.
Parked in the back lot of a mall,
Started recording now.
sitting in the front seats.
Hope this goes well.
This is not where the story begins, but it is the one time where what was always whispered was recorded.
You're not wired, are you?
Even if only one of them knew that's what was happening.
And I started thinking about things with us because
It had taken Emily Morris nearly 2 decades to confront this story and the man in the front seat with her.
Nobody believed Emily.
Her family says it started when Emily was at the most 16. James Wilder was 29 and her cross-country coach at Lindbergh High School. They say their relationship started with Wilder as her mentor.
She was very, very innocent, and she thought things were funny, and she thought life was fun.
Emily was good at cross-country and Wilder good at coaching. He was loved. He was
revered.
There were people who loved him, who admired him.
But as the pair spent more time together after practice, on out-of-town team trips, the rumors spread.
This kind of stuff, if we were the same age, would have been no problem. But now I had no idea. I felt like a flustery little kid. There were times I did not want to do anything because I just didn't think it was what we should do, but we do it anyway.
Yeah.
And you're persuasive. And it wasn't like it hurt. It was. Yeah. I did enjoy the end result.
Her family says a student saw Emily and Wilder in the woods after practice and reported it. They say Lindbergh administrators investigated, found Emily had done nothing wrong, and dropped it. Wilder kept coaching, and Emily kept quiet. Her mother says she now sees there were signs the stories were true.
It was as though somebody had turned off who she was and substituted a person I didn't know.
Do you know why she changed?
Now I do. At the time I didn't.
The rumors became a running joke around school. Emily's sister would hear the same stories 6 years later.
It was their responsibility to report this to the police and to have it investigated. And as far as we know, they did not.
Still, Emily, now an adult, said nothing, even when another student accused Wilder of sexual contact a decade later. Prosecutors cleared him, and he was allowed to keep his job. At the same time, her family and friends say Emily's life spiraled into alcohol and depression.
I can say that most of her turmoil throughout life started because of this.
In 2013, it was the story of another friend's daughter, also coached by Wilder, that finally made Emily want to come forward.
And the daughter came home and told the mom that she didn't like the way that Coach Wilder had touched her today. And Emily at that point said, I can't let this happen to anyone else.
She went to police.
But I remember that week was one of the most challenging weeks of her life.
Police gave Emily the recorder, and Wilder gave them the evidence they needed for an arrest.
I actually haven't been able to listen to the whole thing. It makes me sick to my stomach and makes me cry.
So yeah, it would have been kick-ass just to have had a non-sexual relationship at that time. Now, was it electric at times? Heck yeah. I always want you to know that I was there to protect you, not to harm you. Like even when that time you were on that medicine and you were naked, I could have done anything I wanted. And don't get me wrong, I wanted to.
When was this?
At your house.
A month after the recording and nearly 20 years after their relationship, prosecutors charged Wilder with 6 counts of second-degree sodomy. But Emily would never get the chance to testify in court.
We're here to tell her story because she will never be able to tell her story.
Just as her case was about to go to trial, Emily's dad found her dead in her apartment, rolled up in a blanket with her head in a trash can. The medical examiner said she choked on the trash bag. How that happened could not be determined. She was found next to an empty bottle of vodka, but tests showed she had less than the legal limit in her system.
There was a bottle of vodka in her room, and I think they saw that, and case closed.
And without Emily's testimony, the case against Wilder closed too.
As soon as she passed away, they dropped the case, which was stunning to me because the evidence that they were able to use to charge him, we still have.
St. Louis County prosecutors declined to talk on camera, but a spokesman told us that due to the fact that the victim is deceased, they could no longer proceed with the case. Beyond that, he said he couldn't discuss it because the case is closed. But it seems the tapes may have cost Wilder his job at Lindbergh.
In 2015, the police gave new evidence to the school district. That evidence provided definitive information that our administration needed to move forward.
Lindbergh suspended Wilder when he was charged and negotiated his resignation after his case was closed, nearly 20 years after a student first reported seeing him in the woods with Emily.
I can't speak to how things were handled 20 years ago, and I can't talk about an investigation. I can tell you, given the information that has been shared with administrators, our administrators and our board members have moved swiftly and decisively.
But for Emily's family, nothing has moved fast enough since she found the courage in that car to record her old coach.
She very, very, very much wanted him to lose his teaching license as a result, and to be, at the very least, labeled as a sex offender. And none of that has happened.
We did something that wasn't right according to our laws these days, right? But you know I'm not a creeper.
We tried to reach Wilder, but we have not heard back. State records show he is not currently teaching, but he does still have a license. We're waiting for answers from the state as to why. And we should point out the spokesperson for Lindbergh also went to Lindbergh the same time as Emily, even ran cross country with her, but she said she could only speak in this story in her capacity as an employee of the district.
So her death, it sounds so strange. Did you talk to investigators? Have they said anything, any other details about what they think maybe happened?
It sounds strange to her family too. They would like police to take another look at it, but right now the prosecutor's office can only say that it just appears to be a tragic death.
Ten years ago, a deadly 7.0 earthquake hit the Caribbean country of Haiti, killing an estimated 160,000 people and injuring hundreds of thousands more. Back then, several St. Louis doctors and nurses traveled there and answered the call to help. Our Casey Nolen went with them and reported from Haiti. Now, 10 years later, Casey went back to find a country still in crisis. But he also found some success, thanks in part to St. Louisans.
This you could call progress.
Is this road better? Yeah. It wasn't bad.
Fresh pavement since the last time we were here, making the trip quicker now from the city to the small town of Milo, Haiti, where the story began 10 years ago. The road to recovery hasn't been so smooth.
In the earthquake, we lost lots of colleagues, lots of friends.
Life here in the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere was hard enough before the 2010 earthquake. It killed an estimated 160,000 people and injured more than twice that many. When the earthquake hit, the epicenter was 100 miles away. The injuries came to Milo by helicopter and by the hundreds.
This is the hospital here. This is Sacré-Cœur.
This small town's even smaller hospital was the best hope for more than 1,000 earthquake victims. Volunteers from St. Louis and across the United States turned a tiny 70-bed facility into a life-saving tent city as the patients kept coming.
It's been almost 3 weeks since the earthquake, and now the hospital is starting to take on patients not only from Port-au-Prince.
Today, the landing zone is gone. And in this small town, the chaos from the earthquake is gone too. But this is a country still very much in crisis.
Women are dying in childbearing. Children are dying of malnutrition.
Dr. Harold Prevel is the hospital's CEO.
Name the disease. You have it in Haiti. Ask what has been done, what is in progress. Nobody would give you an answer that could satisfy any decent human being.
If we weren't here, people simply die.
St. Louis physician Dr. Bill Guile was one of the roughly 1,000 volunteers who cared for people after the earthquake. 10 years later, he's the vice chairman of CRUDIM, the St. Louis-born nonprofit that supports the hospital.
Do you worry people have forgotten about Haiti? People have forgotten about Haiti, without an earthquake or a hurricane.
But judging by how the hospital has grown, CRUDIM has not forgotten.
Doctor, when you look at this hospital and think about the last 10 years, what comes to mind?
Miracles.
Since the earthquake, the hospital's Haitian staff can now help people in ways it never could. Life-saving care for premature babies, high-tech tests, complex lab work, and Haitian and volunteer surgeons now work in brand new operating rooms. The hospital has more than tripled in capacity and continues to grow in reputation. Haitians still come from hours away to see a doctor at Sacré-Cœur Hospital.
And this line is not unusual. There can be 500 people a day here waiting to see a doctor, 5 days a week, every day of the year.
So how is this hospital successful in a country that has struggled to make any progress since the earthquake?
Dr. Dubuque from St. Louis and Carlos Ruiz. Those are the two St. Louisans who had started the dream.
Dr. Prevel believes the answer goes back to how it all started, with the support of St. Louisans who stayed committed with their resources and to their belief that Haitians should lead the way.
Our job is not so much to come in and do the work, but to work with them, improve their skills. Our job is to make ourselves unnecessary.
Supporting this Haitian hospital's work to heal and build a better road to the future.
And I see beyond of this. I see our new facility, and I even see a better country.
One of the biggest concerns after the earthquake was the thousands of people with amputations. Would they get prosthetics to be able to get around in a country with not a lot of good roads? Well, another success. The hospital also built a lab to make prosthetics on site for people. And I got to tell you, Mike, there is more to this story that you can fit in a whole newscast. We've put it on our app and on KSDK.com.